Hey guys, it's Dr. Ruth Roberts. Hope y'all are having a fantastic day. It's gorgeous in South Carolina, nice and sunshiny, and it's getting into spring. It's kind of awesome watching the leaves come back on the trees and realizing, yeah, spring really is here. Got Gracie helping me out today. She is chilling out by the desk. That's the upside of being able to work from home, is hanging out with the dogs all day, which has been wonderful. So got a couple of things to talk about today, and hopefully this live thing will work better on the iPad. And I know folks have been coming, and I just haven't been able to see you there. So at any rate, here we go. Last time we were talking about vaccines because we'd had a question about leptospirosis vaccines and the outbreaks there in California and Arizona. And leptos, I had a fairly complete discussion about that, and then also about rabies vaccine. So just to kind of complete all of that, I'll go through the other vaccines that you get offered at a veterinary clinic and talk a little bit about what is or isn't necessary. So the most common one, of course, is Distemper Parvo. And those two diseases are responsible for killing a lot of puppies. Distemper much, much, much less so than it used to be. So the upside is that, I've been in practice for 26 years. At the beginning of that time, I would see 1 to 2 distemper cases a week. In the spring and fall, and then, and that would be it. But frankly, I've not seen active distemper, although we do see it show up in shelter environments, just because there's so many animals and they've come from such a myriad of backgrounds. They're bringing stuff into them. And so this is a situation where that vaccine is really important. The incredible thing about it is that it does offer protection really very quickly. So Dr. Schultz, again, the person who's done so much of the vaccine research for pretty much any manufacturer, he was looking at shelter pets, and what he found is that when he gave that distemper vaccine and then challenged them with live virus, literally what he was doing was giving the vaccine under the skin as it's appropriate, and then giving them an intranasal dose of distemper virus. He could not get any of them to get sick. And so distemper tends to have a huge time period from the time that you get exposed to the virus till you get sick. It can be as short as 4 to 5 days. Sometimes it can take up to 21 days. But for a shelter environment, that's critical to control this disease because it's pretty awful. And in fact, most animals, most dogs, if they get distemper, they do not recover from it. There's something like an 80% recovery rate. So that one's somewhat of a worry, although not much anymore. The other thing that we talk about is Parvo Virus, and that one is ubiquitous still. Glad to see Alicia there, and got some other folks hanging out with us too, which is super. But Parvo Virus is something we see, unfortunately, very, very frequently, and especially in areas where there's poor health in general for both people and pets. So again, in a shelter situation, in an impoverished county, so for instance, up in Dillon County, South Carolina, it is the poorest county in South Carolina, and the shelters there are doing the best that they can, but they're having a heck of a time because they simply don't have the funding, versus our local SPCA, the Charleston Animal Society, has money running out of its ears, and so they're able to do a much better job. But anyway, so typically vaccines are given in a series for puppies, and then boosted at 16 months of age roughly, and then every 3 years. Some veterinarians have finally adopted using blood titers, which is literally a blood sample, and it checks the amount of antibody your pet has for a specific disease. Dr. Schultz, again, pioneered this work, and frankly, for many pets, if they've received one distemper parvo vaccine at 14 to 16 weeks of age, their titer values are showing protection. In many cases, at 16 months of age, sometimes they will require a booster, but after that, we're seeing those titers stay high, often for lifetime, which is fantastic. The American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association has partnered with Kansas State Diagnostic Laboratory and has set up a program where the cost to check a titer is much, much less expensive than through some of our other labs. So if your veterinarian is an AHVMA member, as I am, that can be a really cost-effective way to check and make sure that your pet is still protected. Also, it's going to let you know what you need to do going forward. So, for instance, if you're showing dogs or taking them to a lot of events where they're going to have high exposure, yes, my pet's in good shape. No, my pet's not. Some of the other vaccines that you'll have offered to you are Kennel Cough. And again, that one there's a couple of ways to give it. One is under the skin, which is typically considered to be ineffective, and then the other is intranasal or nose drops. It's only good for about a year, so if you have a dog that goes to a lot of events or boarding kennels, agility shows, what have you, I think it's a good vaccine to have simply because it really stinks if your dog comes down with kennel cough for 2 weeks. Some of the other ones are the flu vaccine. I think the jury is still out there. The flu virus for dogs changes just as it does for people. But the vaccine, I think they've had a new version of it come out, but the vaccine is often lagging several months behind the actual strain of virus that's out there. So for the vast majority of pet owners, I don't recommend using it, even if you travel with your dog and compete in shows. There's some concern that particularly down in the Atlanta area and then up in Chicago, where this last round of flu came out, that there's still some issues there, and there are. It does show up periodically in South Carolina. We had it show up probably 15 years ago, run through and make a lot of dogs sick. Thankfully, none of them were seriously ill or died, but it did make them feel pretty cruddy for a while, just as the flu does for us. Another vaccine you'll see commonly offered is coronavirus. If you read the American Animal Hospital Association guidelines for dogs, this is a vaccine that is considered to be, not of much use. There's never been a documented case of coronavirus, and so it was initially used with Parvo to help improve the immune response, but that's been shown to not be the case. For Lyme vaccine, it depends on where you live. If you live in Maine, maybe that's a good idea. But really the essential thing is to make sure that you're keeping ticks off of your dog. Having said that, up in people, something like 30% of people that test positive and are actually sick with Lyme disease never remember having a tick on them. So that's kind of one of those issues. It's a killed bacterin, so it can have quite a bit more problems as far as vaccine reactions. Hey, Melissa, good to see you hanging out with us. So that's kind of an iffy one. We recommend, getting your dog well protected for ticks. There's various and standard ways to do that, and that might be a discussion for another day. If you live in an area that's endemic for Lyme disease, lepto we talked about last time. In our area, it's just not recommended because I can't make a case for the risk of the vaccine. Regardless of what you do vaccine-wise, and there's several veterinarians like my friend and colleague Will Falconer that are able to come up with homeopathic nosodes, which they found to be very effective. I don't have enough experience to tell you one way or another. I have had a number of clients use them. I've had one client with a dog come up positive for Parvo virus, but the interesting thing about that is there are a number of dogs that fail conventional vaccines, meaning they develop the disease because they're considered to be non-responders, if you will. So you give them the vaccine, but their immune system is not able to respond to it. So regardless of the course of action you choose, if you are vaccinating your dog, each time it gets vaccinated, I strongly recommend using Thuja or Thuja, Thuja. We use a mother tincture typically post-vaccination. The homeopathic folks will use a decoction of Thuja, and that's something that I would definitely talk with folks that are in the know to know how to use it homeopathically. But if you're using it for post-vaccines and you're using the mother tincture, generally a drop per 10 pounds twice a day for 5 days is sufficient to stave off both the short-term and the long-term side effects. So that's been very effective. So that's kind of, covers things up for vaccines on dogs. In cats, the other ones that are out there are the upper respiratory virus vaccine. So that one, if your cat has limited exposure, then not so much after a kitten. Feline leukemia virus vaccine, there's a great deal of evidence that's showing that after 2 years of age, these guys are able to develop enough innate immunity against the virus that they typically don't see it. So that's been fantastic. Because that means that's a lot less vaccines for cats, and because we still don't quite understand what has caused fibrosarcoma virus or fibrosarcomas to develop in vaccine or injection sites in cats, the fewer vaccines we do for cats, the better. For both dogs and cats, once upon a time it was, give them a 7-way vaccine so you get everything in there at one time. Well, the best thing to do is actually have as few antigens or as few diseases in a vaccine as is possible, and to spread out the vaccines by 2 to 3 weeks so that we don't overtax your pet's immune system. So talk with your veterinarian. Check out the American Animal Hospital Association vaccine guidelines. If you Google that, it'll come up. And the American Association of Feline Practitioners vaccine guidelines. Again, that'll come up. And that's some great basic starter information. And then again, Dr. Falconer, I'll put a link to his website down below. So if you want some more information about vaccine nosodes, he can help you out. So that's kind of wraps things up on vaccines. I did have a couple of questions from Michelle, who's just really having a great time cooking crock-pot diet for her dogs and seeing some great results, and also bought my kidney product for her kitty that has kidney disease, unfortunately secondary to urinary tract obstruction. Also seeing some great results and good information there too. But she asked about general supplement recommendations for her healthy dogs. And she has these 3 gorgeous pups that are also agility athletes. So they've got some slightly different needs from the average Joe. But baseline for every dog, I strongly recommend a complete multivitamin, whether you're feeding crock-pot or not. If you're feeding a commercial food, unfortunately, the vitamins that are in those commercial foods are measured before the food is processed. And so if that process involves cooking or extruding or baking or any of that, the actual vitamin content is going to be lower than what the manufacturer states on the bag. And it's just, that's what happens. You cook B vitamins and they get denatured and are no longer useful to you. So I strongly recommend using a multivitamin for every pet, simply because they aren't getting enough. And if some of those things, like B vitamins, are not there in sufficient quantities, that predisposes to a whole host of issues. It doesn't matter which organ system you look at, but B vitamins are just imperative for keeping the immune system functioning well, gut health, you name it, skin health, the whole schmeal. So that's why I recommend multis for everybody. Again, I'm going to toot my own horn. We had the holistic total body support finally arrive. It is up on the website now and available for purchase. It's a balanced multivitamin. The other huge upside there is that it has glandular materials so that we give the internal organs the raw materials they need to heal themselves and to function optimally. We've been having some great feedback on it too. My friend Ashley dropped some off for her dog Hunter and her kitty Jack last night. She emailed me this morning and told me that Jack was knocking Hunter out of the bowl to get his vitamins. So I think they kind of like him. So that's number one. Number two is probiotics. And I typically recommend using a very high dose strain, something along the lines of 100 billion colony forming units scattered over multiple strains. So the product I use, the Probiotics, which we've just actually gotten into the store as well. I'm excited about that too, our own probiotic formula. It's a 12-strain formula and kind of runs the gamut of all the good guys you need in there. And it helps to keep the bacteria in the GI tract happy and provide a great environment for all of the strains that we haven't even defined yet to grow happily and keep the good guys in charge and keep the bad guys under control. So that's so critical. Again, the GI tract, the probiotic organisms there are responsible for something like 70% of your immune system function, and they produce 90% of your neurotransmitters. And they help detoxify, and the list just goes on and on and on. It's stunning to see the number of reports in the human literature that are discussing using probiotics not just for gastrointestinal issues, but for mental health issues, autism, all sorts of stuff. So the literature is finally catching up with what holistic practitioners have seen all along. So, MDs, they want to make sure that they have evidence-based medicine, meaning that they know that they are doing the right thing because there's a study that says, yes, this option is better than that option. Same thing in veterinary medicine. And really, if you're going to use research to guide your decisions, that's the way it should be. One of the limits there, though, is that it only typically looks at one issue. So, a person or a pet that's older and is sick typically have more than one health issue going on. So sometimes it doesn't make sense. And then the third thing that I strongly recommend for everybody is a high dose of fish oil. So if all of the chronic diseases have a basis in inflammation as their mechanism for being, if we can control inflammation through the body starting from a very young age, and in fact many integrative and holistic veterinarians are recommending doing this even for puppies, just because they're going through so much. That's the ball game right there. If we can control inflammation, keep immune system function high, then we're going to protect this pet from so many issues. The other thing I meant to mention about probiotics too, when you're using a high dose product, if your pet has no existing GI issues or skin issues, what have you, generally what we'll suggest is to use it daily for 2 weeks to kind of inoculate the entire gut, and then use it once a week. Most of the studies with probiotics have shown that the colonies start to decline or decrease in number after about 10 days from the last dose. And so by re-inoculating at roughly a week, then you can get those guys up there and keep those numbers high. So that's been super important. Again, with the fish oil, we've got our own Crock-Pot fish oil on the website, so I'm very excited about that. It's been crazy trying to get these supplements developed and actually packaged and shipped and make sure that they are coming from a manufacturer that has great, good manufacturing standards and adheres to them, does all the appropriate testing for, the bad stuff like salmonella and things of that nature. So we're having a great time with that and really delighted to finally get these products in our hands and available to you now. So those are kind of the top three for everybody: dogs, cats, old, young, what have you. For athletes and also for dogs that are known to be predisposed to joint issues, I'd also consider something like Arthro-Ease, which is a joint, it's sort of the kitchen sink of joint supplements, as I like to say. It does include hyaluronic acid, which I feel improves comfort level, and it helps to improve the quality of the viscosity or sort of cushiness of the joint fluid, and it helps to repair cartilage to some degree as well. So that's a good one. The one downside with Arthro-Ease is that it does have a chicken flavor. So if your dog is sensitive to chicken, not a great option. But glucosamine and chondroitin are often made from chicken, and so that can be a problem in and of itself. That's where you'll want to look for just like a plain MSM or hyaluronic acid product. That's kind of next in the barrel to get developed to where we can get a non-reactive formula for you guys, because that has been an issue with many of these things. Michelle also asked about her kitty that had a urinary obstruction and unfortunately had to have surgery to prevent it from happening again. And the surgery had to get redone, and just, not having much fun there. So he's got mild kidney disease as a result of having been obstructed. She's implementing a lot of the information from the kidney health program, but is having trouble getting him converted to the crock-pot diet. And cats are tough. If cats don't want to do something, it just ain't going to happen. So the best way to start is to just put literally maybe a teaspoon of crock-pot food, and I would, if you've got the crock-pot ebook, there's a starter recipe for cats in there. Definitely use that recipe unless your cat is just a total chow hound and doesn't care, and freeze a major portion of it. But start literally with a teaspoon of crock-pot diet off to the side of the bowl once a day, so that your cat kind of looks at it and sniffs around and stuff. And, and that way if they've got issues, then they don't like it, that sort of stuff, they can just ignore it. And then, eventually they're going to try it out, especially if they're really hungry. So you can literally starve your cat to death. So don't just say, okay, buddy, it's crock-pot or nothing, or it's this canned food or nothing, because we have unfortunately seen cats come in very, very ill from not eating for more than 3 days. So make sure they keep eating, but just keep offering it to them. With one of my own cats, Romy, who's now 15, it took me 6 months to convert her from dry food to canned food, and then another 3 months to convert her from canned food to cooked food. And so if your cat is currently only eating dry food and not super happy about canned food, do that first. Even if it's Friskies or 9 Lives or what have you, the moisture content is so much better for cats. We dehydrate them with the dry food, and if you're feeding a really high-test dry food with very little, very high protein, high fat, it can create issues because these guys are already dehydrated. So having said that, just be patient and slow with kitties. Unfortunately, there are some cats that are just not going to buy into this idea of switching food, and so all you can do is keep offering and hope one day that they get bored and decide to check it out. And as far as supplements go for a kitty like that, again, holistic total body support, probiotics, again, interestingly enough, they've been shown to improve kidney function, amongst other things. They've also been shown to slow the growth of cancer in almost every type of cancer researched. And then high-dose fish oil. Kidney disease, again, is one of these things that's based in inflammation. So if we control the overall inflammation, then we're going to get a much better outcome for the pet. They're going to feel better for longer. They're going to keep eating and feeling great. And then the other big bang, cats, again, you kind of have to pick and choose about what they will and won't eat, and kind of choose things in the order that's most likely to provide you or your cat with the best support, for lack of a better word. The other big one, though, is quercetin. And what's really cool about quercetin is that it's a great antioxidant, and some people have used it terrifically. It's used for allergies, things of that nature. But interestingly, quercetin works by preventing the deposition of AGE, advanced glycosylation end products, or AGE, literally, on the basement membrane of the kidney. And so when you're able to prevent this from happening, then less kidney cells get destroyed. And in many of the pets that I've seen for 1, 2, 3 years or more, we've seen creatinine values that weren't horrible, so somewhere on the order of 2.4 to 2.9 for dogs and 2.5 to 3.2 for cats, trend back down towards normal. What's even cooler is that this new SDMA test that IDEXX has, which is supposed to detect kidney dysfunction, I should say, earlier, we've seen those tests come up normal 3 years after initial diagnosis with early kidney disease. So that's been really awesome. It's one of those supplements that I take myself. It's kind of like it doesn't matter how healthy you are. Eventually, something's going to get you, and for most people, it ends up being their kidneys. So that's what I've got. If you guys have questions, love to hear them. I can finally see kind of who's hanging out with me. Not seeing any questions here. So I'm going to hang it up for this week. I'll put a link for Dr. Falconer's website, and we'll kind of go from there. Hope you're having a fantastic day. Enjoy spring, and we'll talk next week. If you've got questions, please, please, please send them to me. Message me, put them under the comment section here, under this video, wherever you like. Want to get you as much information as I possibly can. Take good care. And remember, your pet's best health starts in the bowl.